Okay, so this lesson is the introductory lesson for trigonometry, which is initially based on right-angled triangles, and it uses the property of similarity between triangles to establish ratios that are common for all triangles, provided they have the same angles within those triangles. What we're going to do is we're going to designate one of the angles first off with a Greek letter. We normally, quite frequently, we use the Greek letter theta to designate an angle in a triangle. Now, from that point, we also need to establish what the three sides of the triangle are with respect to that one angle. So we always know that the longest side in the triangle is going to be the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is always opposite the right angle. So we'll label that one hypotenuse right away. And then the label that we're going to give the other two sides is actually not too mysterious, really. The label that we give to the side over here, well, that side is opposite this angle. If you could think of yourself as being inside a triangular room and you're standing in a corner, then this side here would be the wall that's opposite you as you stand in the corner of that room. So we'll call this side opposite. And then the last side, is the wall that's right next to you. There's two walls that are right next to you. One of them is the hypotenuse, the longest side of the triangle. But then the other wall that is right next to you is called the adjacent side. And in fact, the word adjacent basically just means next to. Okay, so now that we've got these three sides labelled, we can establish the ratios between the sides with respect to this angle, the angle theta. We have three ratios. The first ratio is the sine ratio. The second one is the cosine ratio. And the third ratio is the tangent ratio. Tangent. All of these three ratios are with respect to the angle, and our angle in this case is called theta. So what we now need to do is establish exactly, or define exactly, which sides we'll use to compare to one another with respect to that angle. The sine ratio is the ratio of the opposite side over the hypotenuse. So we'll just write that's opposite over hypotenuse. And the cosine ratio is the ratio of the adjacent side to the hypotenuse. So we write adjacent over hypotenuse. And the tangent ratio, the last ratio that's left, is the ratio of the sides, the opposite side over the adjacent side. So the tangent ratio for theta is opposite over adjacent. Now the thing is that in mathematics we don't want to have to write the word sine out and cosine and tangent all the time. So we try to write things succinctly, we try to write things efficiently, so we end up shortening these words to just the basic things that will indicate for us that we're talking about a specific ratio. So for the sine ratio, we write it as sin, but actually it's still pronounced sine. And, oh, sorry, just bumping the world here. Better put Australia back on the map, good. So we've got sine theta is equal, and rather than opposite over hypotenuse, we try to think of a letter that will abbreviate the words opposite, adjacent and hypotenuse. So for opposite we use the letter O, and for hypotenuse we use the letter H. Likewise we abbreviate cosine and we write cos, and this time we actually pronounce it cos. So cos theta is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse, so we write A over H. And tangent we abbreviate as being tan, so we write tan theta is equal to the opposite over the adjacent, which is O over A. Okay, now we're going to be able to use those three ratios to work out the sides and angles for triangles. These three ratios are really important to recall and remember all the time. And some people do struggle to remember exactly which sides go with which ratio, and a way to help you recall that is to use a thing called a mnemonic. Now, in a mnemonic, it just means we take all the important letters that we need and we kind of create a word out of it. And in this case, the mnemonic that we use is SOHCAHTOA, which is SOHCAHTOA. Oopsies. Alrighty. Hopefully you can see from this, from SOHCAHTOA, that we've got sine, the sine ratio, is the opposite over the hypotenuse. The cosine ratio is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. The tangent ratio is the opposite over the adjacent. So we remember those ratios by recalling this mnemonic SOHCAHTOA. Right, that's about all we need to introduce the idea of trigonometry. Next lesson, we're going to look at using trigonometry and how we can apply it to actually find the lengths of sides and angles within a right angled triangle.